Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be reading a new video named Usborne. Yeah, I'm reading. Guess I've never heard about this book because I never read it before. So now let's begin. But this is kind of a long story. So kindergarten students need to stop this video. Now let's begin. The Secret Garden, illustrated by Alan Marks. Contents: Chapter 1, Country Mary. Chapter 2, The Strange House. Chapter 3, A Robin and a Key. Chapter 4, Draken. Chapter 5, A Cry in the Night. Chapter 6, The Magic of the Garden. Chapter 7, Mr. Craven Comes Home. Now let's begin Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Country Mary. In the scorching heat of the garden in India, Mary Lana stamped her foot. "Fetch me a drink now," she ordered. Instantly, servants rushed to obey. Meanwhile, Mary began making a pretend garden, sticking flowers into the hot, dry earth. "It looks all wrong," she muttered. Glancing up, Mary saw a beautiful woman strolling past, surrounded by an admiring group of army officers. "Mother," cried Mary. She rushed forward, but Mrs. Lannis brushed her daughter away, as she always did. It was Mary's last glass limp of her mother. Over the next few days, a terrible fever, Cicola, swept through her parents' house. Her mother and father died, along with many of their servants. Mary shut away in the nursery, never caught the cholera. But she was left all alone in the world. After that, Mary was passed it around like a package between her parents' friends, until a letter came from her uncle, Mr. Craven. "Nobody cares what I want," said Mary, but she had nowhere else to go. Chapter 2, The Strange House. Several weeks later, Mary was sitting in a coach carriage opposite disheartening-looking Mrs. Medlock. "What's that whooshing noise?" Mary asked as they drove across a blank landscape. "It's the wind howling across the moor," Mr. Medlock replied. "What's more?" asked Mary. "Miles of empty land, and a moor is right in the middle of it. I hate it already," thought Mary. "How many servants will I have?" she asked. Mrs. Medlock looked shocked. "I don't know how it was in India. But here," she said, "but here you'll take care of yourself." They arrived late at night. Mr. Medlock marched Mary across a huge wall, up steep stairs, and along twisting corners. "Your bedroom," she announced at last, flicking open a door. "You must stay here unless you're going outside. On no account must you go poking about the house." As soon as Mary stepped into the room, Mr. Medlock shut the door and hurried off. Mary looked around. It was not a child's room. tapestries hung on the walls, and in the middle stood a vast four-poster bed. Outside, the wind howled like a lonely person, as lonely as Mary. Then other noise pestered the wind. A far-off sobbing sound. That's not the wind, Mary thought. It's a child crying. Who is it? She was itching with curiosity, but she didn't dare disobey Mrs. Medlock. Finally, worn out from her journey, she fell asleep. The next morning, Mrs. Medlock rushed into Mary's room with her breakfast. Ugh! Ugh! Exclaimed Mary, looking at the porridge. What's that? It looks disgusting. I won't eat it. Chapter 3, Robin and a Key. The only person... Mrs. Medlock signed it at the pale, skinny child, swamped up by the big bed. Just drink your milk, then, she said, and you can go out. Don't want to, rodent Mary. Well, if you don't, you'll be stuck in here and there's nothing to do outside, snapped Mrs. Medlock. Mary took a while to get dressed. She'd always had servants to dress her before, but finally she was ready. The only person she could see was an old man digging. Who are you? demanded Mary. Ben Whiffstarf. He groaned. What's in there? Mary asked, pointing to a crumbling ivy-covered wall behind them. Ah, that's the secret garden. Mr. Craven shut it up. Why? Asked Mary. Ben looked sad. It was Mrs. Craven's special garden, and she left it. But she died, and the master was so unhappy he buried the key and went away. As he spoke, a robin flew up to Ben. His winked face creased into a smile. There's no door, Ben went on. But that doesn't stop this one. The robin croaked its head to the side and looked at Mary and cheated. She whispered, Will you be friends with me? So, Ben muttered, You can be friendly. You sound just like Draken talking to his animals. Who's Draken? Asked Mary. He's the brother of a maid here, said Ben. Draken can grow flowers out of stones and chime the birds. Even the deer loved Draken. I wish I could meet him. But Ben was growing impatient. Run along now, he said. I've got work to do. The robin flew off. Mary followed him. Please, Robin. Show me the way to the garden, she begged. The robin chirped and hopped up and down on the ground. He's telling me something, thought Mary. He scratched in the soil and saw, half hidden, a rusty ring. Picking it up, she saw it wasn't a ring at all. It was a key. It's the key to the secret garden. Chapter 4, Draken. Every morning, Mary jumped out of bed, ready to search a way into the garden. I have the key, she told herself. I just need to find the door. Mr. Metlock noticed a change in her. She looks downright pretty now, with her rosy cheeks, she thought. She was so plain and scary at first. One day, as the winter trees were beginning to blossom, and the wind came in sweet, scented gusts from the moor, the robin fluttered down and hopped along beside Mary. Mary never knew if what happened next was magic. A gust of wind lifted up a patch of ivy, revealed to an old wooden door. Mary put her key in the lock, turned it with both hands, and pushed it. Slowly, the door creaked open. Let's see what's gonna happen. She was inside the secret garden. It was a mysterious place, a hasty, frosty tangle of rose branches that trailed it into the walls and spread along the ground. Hundreds of green spiky shots thrust up through weathered grass. It isn't completely dead, she whispered. I'm glad. The shots were so crowded that she began to clear spaces through them. The robin chirped as through pleaded someone was gardening here at last. Mary worked for hours. It must be lunchtime, she thought hungrily. I better go in before Mrs. Metlock starts looking for me. Racing back after lunch, she noticed Ben talking to a curly-haired boy. With a fawn by his side, as the boy walked away, he played a tune on a rough wooden pipe. Shyly, Mary went up to him. Are you drinking? I am, he grunted. And you're Mary. Ben told me about you. He looked at so friendly and kind. Mary felt she could trust him. Can you keep a secret? Draken chuckled. I keep secrets all the time. If I told wild animals live and birds make their nests, they won't be safe. I found a secret garden, she said quickly. I think it's mostly dead. I'm the only person who wants to see it live. Come and see. She led him through the ivy curtain, and Draken looked around amazed. I've never thought I'd see this place, he muttered. It's like being in a dream. He scraped a rose branch with his pocket knife. There's green underneath, he said. These roses are alive. Some dead one needs cutting, that's all. Mary danced around the garden in delight. It'll be a fountain of roses come summer, said Dragon. One more plants. Snapdragons, lask, pearl, love, and miss. We'll have the prettiest garden in England. Will you really help? Asked Mary. She could hardly believe it. Of course, he replied. It's fun shut in here walking up in the garden. Chapter 5. A Cry in the Night. Every day they worked in the garden. I don't want it to tidy, Mary decided. It wouldn't feel like a garden then. It's a secret, sure enough, said Drake. And look, the robins building a nest. He wouldn't do that unless he felt safe. I feel safe and happy here, too. I feel safe and happy here, too. Mary confident. But I used to be angry, or all the time. Nobody liked me. Draken's fawn nuzzled Mary's hand and he laughed. There's someone who likes you, he said. So does the robin, and so do I. That night, lying in bed, Mary heard the wind ratch. I don't hate it now, she realized. She thought of the wild animals on the moors, snuggling their host, protected from its blasts. Suddenly, she was alert, listening. That's the noise again, she thought, crying. It's not wind. Where is it coming from? Gripping her besides candle, she followed the sound again, shadowy passages, until she reached it, a door with a glimmer of light beneath. Quietly, she opened the door. A fire burning in a grate threw a dim light onto a huge craft bed. In the bed was a boy soaping. Dark eyes started from an ivy white face. Are you a ghost? He whimpered. Mary was horrified. What's wrong with you? Colin sighed. I'm weak. You won't die from that, Mary scoffed. And my father doesn't even care, Colin went on, as if he hadn't heard. He hates me because my mother died when I was born. He can't bear to look at me. Just like the secret garden, Mary said. What garden? Your mother's garden, Mary explained. Your father shut it up after she died. I haven't a lock, Colin announced grandly. No, cried Mary. Why not? Then everyone would go in it. It won't be a secret anymore. Never mind, said Colin faithfully. I'll never see it anyway. Yes, you will, argued Mary. You go outside, don't you? Never, Colin. I can cope with cold air. Don't forget I'm dying. Mary felt he was rather proud of this, and she didn't feel like it. Don't talk about death all the time, she said. Think of other things. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Think of the sun and rain and birds bursting into flower. Think of new green leaves. Think of the secret garden coming alive. Gradually, Colin's eyes closed, and Mary crept away. Chapter 6. The Magic of the Garden. The next morning, Mary had to see if she'd dreamed at all. She burst into Colin's room and pulled back the curtains, flooding the room with sunlight. Colin sat up in bed and smiled. I just realized, he said. We're cousins. They were talking so loudly that they didn't hear Mrs. Mitlock coming in. I told you not to go poking around, she shouted at Mary. Go back to your room at once. No, Colin ordered. I like her. I want her to stay with me. She'll tire you out, said Mrs. Mitlock. Come along, Mary. Do as what I say, screamed Colin. Leave Mary and get out. Yes, dear, said Mrs. Mitlock. trying to sound snuffing. She did promise Mr. Craven she would never upset Colin. Hurrying, she withdrew. You're horribly bossy, said Mary. I used to be like that when I live in India, but now I'm trying to change. Why shouldn't I give orders? Snapped Colin. I'm the master of this house when father's away. Mary got up to leave. Don't go, pleaded Colin. All trace bunnies was gone from his voice. I don't want to be alone. I'll be back later, Mary promised. I have a friend I want you to meet. A few hours later, Mary and Draken creeped into Colin's room. Sunlight lit up sprays of flowers and the air was alive with birds' song. Colin started. I can feel things growing. He gasped. It's spring, said Draken. Makes you feel good. We'll soon have you working in the garden. But I can even stand, Colin farted. Looking at his thin legs, only because you haven't tried it, said Mary. Draken helped Colin to his feet. Try now, Colin. You can walk. You really can, urged Mary. Disdainfully and clicking to Draken, Colin moved his weak limbs to move. The others saw his pale face grow rosy in the sunlight. Mary, Draken, he cried. I'm gonna get wool. I can feel it. Chapter 7. Every day they played and worked in the garden. Every day Colin grew stronger. By now spring had turned into summer. He was completely well, but the three of them pretended he was still ill. No one must know, Colin instead. I want to surprise my father. If only he could come home. Colin began to wish. Come home, come home. One night, Colin's father, far away in Italy, had a strange dream. He heard his dead wife calling his name. Where are you? He pleaded. In the garden, came the reply, like the sound from a golden flute. Mr. Craven woke, determined to return to his mare at once. Where's Colin? He demanded the minute he arrived home. Mr. Mello gasped, shocked at his sudden appearance. He plays in the garden, sir, with Mary and Draken, she said in the shaky voice. No one is allowed near them. In the garden, thought Mr. Craven, my dream. As he hurried down the path, he heard children laughing in his wife's old garden. The door's locked and the keys buried, he told himself. I must be still dreaming. Suddenly, the door burst open, and Colin and Mary dashed out. Father, you're here, cried Colin. Mr. Craven hugged his son tight. Is it really you? You're well. How did it happen? It was the garden, said Colin and Mary. I thought the garden would be dead, muttered his father. It came alive, said Mary. Mr. Craven smiled. And so has Colin, he said. Thank you, Mary. The end. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel because I have lots of amazing videos waiting for you. Bye. I hope to see you next time seeing my reading. Well, my most popular video is learning to swim. Make sure to watch it and subscribe. Bye. See you soon.